Hello LSP, you've reached the last video in my Microphone Essential Review. And it's just a couple slides here, critical concepts, crucial concepts, ideas to think about when selecting and using microphones. First one is that every mic sounds totally different. I mean, you already know this. You've been around audio long enough to know that every speaker sounds different, every guitar sounds different, etc., etc. But it's something you need to think about is that no two mics sound the same. And of course, microphones are made for specific things. You can use them you can always break the rules. You can use a kick drum microphone on a vocal if you want, but there are vocal microphones, instrument microphones, measurement microphones, sax mics, tom mics, etc. And you need to learn those and kind of know why they're used in those particular cases and start to learn what they sound like so you can make choices yourself. You need to become familiar with the frequency response of common mics and use that knowledge to match source, situation, and music style appropriately. Yes, I was reading the slide there. Another crucial concept is gain before feedback. I've been talking about this the whole time here. This is really the ratio of, it really comes down to polar pattern. How does the microphone point forward versus how does it point backwards? And this is an issue in live sound. We want to avoid feedback. It's embarrassing. It's awful. It's terrible. You want to avoid it. But it's a really complicated thing, feedback. It has everything to do with, I don't want to go into all the details that can make feedback, but feedback is complicated, so it's hard to measure a microphone's gain before feedback. How resistant is a microphone to feedback? Well, it depends on its polar pattern. It depends on how the microphone sounds in the back of its pattern, on the side of its pattern. It depends on the frequency. It's complicated. So this is not a really scientifically measurable thing. You can measure it at one frequency between two microphones, but it's very subjective. So it's something that as an experienced professionals start to learn. They kind of understand how a 58 is going to work with a wedge behind it versus a wedge on the side and that sort of stuff. But it's something you want to think about is how resistant is the microphone to feedback. Another crucial concept, the near field. If you've been in any of my classes before, you are aware that I love talking about the near field. The idea of the near field is that large instruments produce sound typically from multiple locations. In this case, this contrabass saxophone is not just making sound from the bell, it's making sound from all the holes. So a source this large really is going to sound differently depending on where you put the microphone. You put it down here, it's going to sound completely different than there and completely different from there. Why is this any different from a drum set? Drum sets produce hi-hats on one side of the drum set and a floor tom on the other side, right? It's a very large instrument, and depending on where you put the microphone, you're going to get more or less of a particular thing. So if you want to get a holistic sound, you only have one microphone. You want to sound very natural. You want the saxophone to sound exactly like it does in the room. You're going to pull that microphone quite a bit back. And we call it the longest dimension. Once you are farther away from the longest dimension of the source, it's going to sound natural. The longest dimension rule. In this case, a piano is a very large sound source. People in live sound tend to shove microphones in the piano. Why? Well, it gets louder, but the downside is the more you shove the microphone into the piano, the more it's going to sound like that particular part of the piano. So classical recordists are going to pull the microphones out so it sounds like a piano. Live sound people are going to shove it in really deep so it's louder, but it sounds nastier and requires EQ. Ian Corbett, another audio education teacher, he offers the longest dimension rule. If you want to sound natural, I said this a moment ago, move the whole length of the piano outward and it's going to sound natural, but it's not going to be late. It's not going to be loud. Therefore, you've got gain before feedback problems. So the near field and gain before feedback are a balancing act, a teeter-totter that you got to play with in live sound. The farther you pull back from the saxophone, the better it sounds, but the more likely it is to feedback. And this, of course, is why we love live sound, because it's a challenge, right? It's never the same day twice. Okay, I hope this lecture wasn't too long. I hope you picked something up from it. I hope it means you can interact in class and we can do some cool miking. All right, have a great day. Bye-bye.